Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya 'ala as-salah. Hayya 'ala as-salah. Hayya 'ala al-falah. Hayya 'ala al-falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
After reciting the Tashahhud, Ta'awuz and Surah Al-Fatiha, Hazrat Khalif Masih the Fifth, Ayyadullah Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz
Allah
stated,
Ta'ala Quran Majid में फरमाता है कि अल्लज़ीन इस्तजाबू लिल्लाहि अल्लज़ीन इस्तजाबू लिल्लाहि वर रसूलिhi मिन बादि मा असाबहुमुल क़र्ह लिल्लज़ीना आसनू मिनहुम.
Allah the Exalted says in the Holy Quran,
Azim.
الَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِلَّهِ, والرسول من بعد ما أصابهم القرح
अपने जख्मी होने के बाद
للذين
हुक्म
أحسنوا
किया,
منهم واتقوا
उनमें से उनके लिए
أجر
जिन्होंने अच्छी तरह
عظيم.
अपना फर्ज अदा
Meaning,
किया है,
as to those who answered the
इख्तियार
call
किया
of
है,
Allah and the
बड़ा
Messenger
अजर है.
after they had received an injury, such of them as do good and act righteously shall have a
सहाबा
great
का जिक्र
reward.
चल रहा था और हज़रत ज़ुबैर का जिक्र कुछ बाकी था जो मैंने बयान करना था, आज वही बयान करूँगा. इस आयत के बारे में जो मैंने अभी पढ़ी है, बयान फरमाते
In
हुए
relation to the accounts of the companions, some details of the accounts in the life of Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu were left, and I will narrate them today.
कि ऐ मेरे भांजे,
While mentioning the verse I have just recited,
ज़ुबैर और अबू
Hazrat
बकर
Aisha radiallahu anha said to her nephew, Urwa,
में मज़कूर साहबा में से थे.
O my nephew,
इसी आयत में मज़कूर साहबा में से
your
थे.
forefathers Zubair and Abu Bakr were among the companions referred to in this verse.
ज़ख्मी हुए और मुशरिकीन पलट गए.
When the Holy Prophet ﷺ was injured during the Battle of Uhud
महसूस
and the
हुआ
idolaters retreated,
कि वो कहीं फिर लौट कर हमला न
he
करें.
feared that they may come back
इसलिए
and
आप
attack
सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम
again.
ने फरमाया कि इनका पीछा करने कौन-कौन जाएगा.
Hence, the Holy Prophet ﷺ asked,
70 सहाबा तैयार हो गए.
who will go and follow
रावी
them?
कहते हैं कि अबू बकर और ज़ुबैर,
70 companions from among them became ready to go immediately.
ये सही बुखारी
The
की
narrator states that Abu Bakr and Zubair were also among them.
और ये दोनों,
This narration is from Sahih Bukhari.
और ज़ुबैर भी ज़ख्मियों से में थे.
Both Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu as well as Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu were among the injured.
कि हशाम ने अपने वालिद से रिवायत की है, वो कहते हैं कि हज़रत आयशा ने
This narration in Sahih Muslim is as follows.
हमारे आबा उन सहाबा में से थे.
Hisham narrates from his father,
अल्लाह और उसके
Hazrat
रसूल की
Aisha
आवाज़
said
पर
to me,
लबैक कहा.
your forefathers were among those companions who responded to the call of Allah and His Messenger despite being injured.
कि मैंने रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम को अपने कानों से ही फरमाते हुए
Hazrat
सुना
Ali
है
radiallahu anhu
कि
narrates,
तलहा और ज़ुबैर
I have heard the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself say that Talha and Zubair will be my neighbors in
बयान
paradise.
करते हैं कि हज़रत अबू बकर, हज़रत उमर, हज़रत उस्मान, हज़रत अली, हज़रत तलहा, हज़रत ज़ुबैर, हज़रत साद, हज़रत अब्दुर्रहमान और हज़रत सईद बिन ज़ैद का मुकाम
Hazrat
ऐसा
Saeed
था
bin Jubair narrates that the status of Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Talha, Hazrat Zubair, Hazrat Saad, Hazrat Abdurrahman and Hazrat Saeed bin Zaid was such that they used to fight ahead of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the battlefield and would stand behind him in prayer.
कुछ उनकी शान में बेअदबी की.
Hazrat Abdurrahman bin Akhnas relates that he was in the mosque when an individual spoke about Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu in a disrespectful manner. Upon this, Hazrat Saeed bin Zaid stood up and said, I bear witness that I have most certainly heard the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say 10 individuals will certainly enter paradise. The Holy Prophet ﷺ himself will enter paradise. Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu will enter paradise. Hazrat Umar will enter paradise. Hazrat Usman will enter paradise. Hazrat Ali will enter paradise. And so too will Hazrat Talha, Hazrat Zubair bin Awam, Hazrat Saad bin Malik, and Hazrat Abdurrahman bin Auf. And if I wish, I could name the 10th individual as well. The narrator says that the people inquired about the identity of the 10th individual. Hazrat Saeed bin Zaid remained silent for a short while. The narrator says that some people inquired again as to who the 10th individual was. Upon this he said, Saeed bin Zaid, i.e. he himself. I believe this has already been mentioned in relation to Hazrat Talha radiallahu anhu. Mentioning the names of the scribes of the Holy Quran, Hazrat Khalifa Masih II radiallahu anhu says, as soon as the revelation was received by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was recorded in writing from his dictation. A number of persons are known to have been assigned by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this purpose. Of these, the names of the following 15 have been mentioned in historical accounts: Zayd bin Thabit, Ubay bin Ka'b, Abdullah bin Saad bin Abi Sarah, Zubair bin Awam, Khalid bin Said bin As, Hibban bin Said al-As, Hanzala bin Rabi al-Asadi, Muaykab bin Abi Fatima, Abdullah bin Arkam al-Zuhri, Shurahbil bin Hasana, Abdullah bin Rawaha, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Uthman and Hazrat Ali. Whenever the Holy Prophet ﷺ received a revelation, he would send for one of these persons and dictate to him the text of the revelation he had received. Hazrat Anas bin Malik relates that the Holy Prophet ﷺ permitted Hazrat Zubair bin Awam to wear a silk shirt during one battle as he was suffering from pruritus. When the Holy Prophet ﷺ distributed the properties in Medina, he allotted a large portion of land to Hazrat Zubair. The Holy Prophet ﷺ also gave him a date orchard.
Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam का Hazrat Zubair bin Awam को ज़मीन हिबा करने के मुतालिक बयान फरमाते हैं.
With regards to the Holy Prophet ﷺ granting land to Hazrat Zubair, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II radiallahu anhu says, the Holy Prophet ﷺ bestowed a large piece of land belonging to the state to Hazrat Zubair, in which his horse could run until its last breath. In other words, it could run as far as it was able to. This marking included from where Hazrat Zubair's horse stopped, after which he threw his whip in the air with full force. Thereupon, the Holy Prophet ﷺ decided that he would not only be given the land where his horse had stopped, but the area where his whip landed would also be granted to him. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II radiallahu anhu writes, the horses in our country can run for miles as well, but Arab horses can run even faster. If we estimate that it can run up to 4 or 5 miles, the land that was granted to him was approximately 20,000 acres. Imam Abu Yusuf writes in his book Kitab al-Kharaj that the Holy Prophet ﷺ allocated a portion of land for Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu, which contained date palms. This excerpt from Imam Abu Yusuf's writings was also cited by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II radiallahu anhu. He writes, the land he was given had date palms, and at one point this belonged to the Jewish tribe Banu Nadir, and this was a village recognized as Juruf. Juruf is the name of a place situated 3 miles from Medina in the direction of Syria. This was a traditional village. When we place this account alongside the other narrations, it can be concluded that at the time the Holy Prophet ﷺ gave the upper part of the land to Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu, i.e. where there is mention of the horse running, and this is equated to approximately 15 or 20,000 acres. This was given to him at a time when he was already the owner of a village which contained date palms. Urwa bin Zubair relates that Marwan bin Hakam said, the year in which there was an outbreak of a disease which caused nosebleeds, Hazrat Usman bin Affan radiallahu anhu also suffered greatly from this, to the extent that it prevented him from performing the Hajj, and he even wrote down his will. In that moment, one of the Quraysh approached him and said, elect someone as the Caliph, i.e. due to the dire circumstances. He asked, is it the people who have asked this? To which he replied in the affirmative. Hazrat Usman asked who they wished to be appointed as the Caliph, but to this he remained silent. Then another person came, who the narrator says that he believes was Harith, and he also asked him to appoint a Caliph. Hazrat Usman asked, is this what the people are asking? To which he replied, yes. Hazrat Usman asked who should be the caliph, to which the man remained silent. Hazrat Usman then said, perhaps they desire to elect Hazrat Zubair. The man replied, yes. Hazrat Usman then said, by him in whose hands is my life, as far as I know, he is the best among them, i.e. referring to Hazrat Zubair, and was dearest to the Holy Prophet ﷺ.
बयान फरमाया करते थे कि एक मर्तबा उनका एक अंसारी सहाबी से जो ग़ज़वा बदर
Hazrat Zubair radiyallahu anhu relates that on one occasion he had a dispute in the presence of the Holy Prophet ﷺ with an Ansari companion who had taken part in the Battle of Badr. In regards to the tributary they both used to irrigate their fields.
नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने बात को ख़त्म करते हुए फरमाया कि ज़ुबैर तुम अपने खेत को सैराब करके
Whilst resolving the matter, the Holy Prophet ﷺ stated,
अंसारी को ये बात नागवार
Zubair, water your field and leave the rest of the water for your neighbor.
फूफीज़ाद है ना इसलिए आप
The Ansari companion was displeased with this response and said, O Messenger of Allah, you have issued this verdict only because he is your cousin. Upon hearing this, the blessed countenance of the Holy Prophet ﷺ changed, and he said to Hazrat Zubair radiyallahu anhu, control the flow of water so it only irrigates up to your boundary edge. Hence, the Holy Prophet ﷺ granted Hazrat Zubair his full rights, whereas previously the advice of the Holy Prophet ﷺ was such that it allowed for both Hazrat Zubair and the Ansari companion to derive benefit. However, when the Ansari companion expressed his discontentment at the decision of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he then issued the verdict according to what was the actual due right of Hazrat Zubair radiyallahu anhu. Hazrat Zubair radiyallahu anhu relates, by God, my impression is that the following verse of the Holy Quran was revealed with regards to this incident. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Meaning, but know by thy Lord they are not believers until they make thee judge in all that is in dispute between them, and then find not in their hearts any demur concerning that which thou decidest, and submit with full submission. Hazrat Zubair radiyallahu anhu relates that when the following verse of the Holy Quran was revealed, ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ عِنْدَ رَبِّكُمْ تَخْتَصِمُونَ, then surely on the day of resurrection you will dispute with one another before your Lord. He asked, O Messenger of Allah, does this refer to our worldly disputes? To which the Holy Prophet ﷺ answered, yes. Then when the verse ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ, meaning then on that day you shall be called to account about the worldly favours, was revealed, Hazrat Zubair radiyallahu anhu asked the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which bounties shall we be recalled to account for when we only possess water and dates? The Holy Prophet ﷺ replied, beware, the era of bounties and wealth is well nigh. Today there may be restraint, but God willing, the time of abundance is to come. Hafs bin Khalid says that the nobleman who related this hadith would travel to us from Mosul. Mosul is a well-known city of Syria and was of great importance among the Islamic territories and cities in that time due to its large population and vast area. Many people would visit there. It is situated near Nineveh, 222 miles from the edge of the Tigris River in Baghdad. This is what is written in the lexicon in regards to their city. In any case, the narrator says that he would travel to us from Mosul. He continues, I have accompanied Hazrat Zubair bin Awam on a number of journeys. On one occasion, when we were in the desert, he needed to wash himself. So he asked me to form a cover around him. I therefore formed a covering around him using a cloth as he washed himself. Unintentionally, my gaze fell upon his body, and I saw that his entire body, including his head, was completely covered in sword wounds. I said to him, by God, up until now, I have never seen such scars on a body left by sword wounds as I have seen upon your body. He responded by asking, you have seen the scars on my body? And then said, by God, all these scars were received whilst fighting in the way of Allah alongside the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Miqdad, Hazrat Abdullah bin Mas'ud, and Hazrat Abdul Rahman bin Auf had all instructed that as part of their will, Hazrat Zubair ought to look after their wealth. In accordance with this, he safeguarded their wealth and would spend his own wealth on their children. As he was blessed with an abundance of wealth, he would not spend their money on their children, but instead he would spend from his own pocket so that their heirs could make use of their own wealth, i.e., he had no greed at all for any wealth.
हज़रत ज़ुबैर के 1000 इनके बारे में आता है कि इनके 1000 ग़ुलाम थे जो उन्हें खिराज यानी ज़मीन की पैदावार अदा करते थे। वो उसमें से घर कुछ भी ना लाते और सारा सदका कर देते।
It is mentioned with regards to Hazrat Zubair that he had 1,000 servants who would offer the khiraj to him, i.e. the produce of his lands. However, he would not take any of it for himself, but instead would give it all away in charity. Muti bin Aswad relates, I heard Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu say that Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu is one of the pillars that assists the faith. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu narrates, when Hazrat Zubair was standing on the day of the Battle of the Camel, he called me and I stood beside him. He then said, O my dear son, either the oppressors shall be killed or the oppressed. It seems as though I shall be killed in a state of being oppressed. My greatest worry is regarding my debt. Do you think there shall remain any money left over from my debt? Then he said, O my son, repay my debts by selling my wealth. I pledge a third of my wealth. If, after repaying my debts, there is any wealth remaining, then a third of it is for your children. He pledged whatever remained for his children. Hisham said that the sons of Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair were the same age as Hazrat Zubair's sons, Khubayb and Abad. Meaning, Abdullah's sons were the same age as Hazrat Zubair's sons, i.e. his sons were of similar age to his own brothers. At that time, Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair had 9 daughters. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu relates that Hazrat Zubair began stating his will regarding the debts he owed, saying, O my son, if you are unable to repay any portion of my debt, then seek help from my master. Abdullah bin Zubair states that he did not understand what was meant by master. So he asked him, who is your master? Hazrat Zubair replied, it is Allah. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair states that whenever he faced difficulty in repaying his father's debts, he would say, O Zubair's master, repay his debt. Accordingly, the debt would be paid off, meaning Allah the Almighty would establish means for the repayment of this debt. Whatever property had been left behind would prove sufficient in repaying the debt. When Hazrat Zubair was martyred, he had no wealth to his name except a few plots of land, which included Ghaba as well. He had 11 properties in Medina, 2 properties in Basra, 1 in Kufa, and 1 in Egypt. The manner in which Hazrat Zubair came into debt was that people used to bring their wealth to him to give as a trust, but instead Hazrat Zubair would consider it a loan, saying he feared the possibility of the wealth being wasted. He wouldn't take the wealth as a trust, but said he would take it as a loan, and would thus spend it from there as well.
इसलिए आपने हमको बताते थे कि ये कर्ज की
Furthermore, the wealth would remain safe from any potential danger. Hence, he would tell them that he was taking it as a loan and repay it. In any case, Hazrat Zubair never became affluent in terms of accumulating wealth or generating revenue, nor from his other financial endeavors. However, he would participate in battles alongside the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, and Hazrat Uthman. He always participated in jihad, but he was not from among those who accumulated surplus wealth. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair relates that when he calculated his father's debt, it amounted to 2.2 million. Hazrat Hakim bin Hizam once met Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair and said, "O my nephew, how much debt does my brother have?" Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair concealed the actual amount and said 100,000. Hazrat Hakim bin Hizam said, "By God, I do not think you have enough wealth to repay this," according to the apparent wealth he had. Then Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair said, "If I were to tell you that the debt is in fact 2.2 million, what would you say?" To this he replied, "I do not think you could bear such a debt. It will be difficult to repay. If you are unable to repay, then come to me for help," meaning that he was willing to help him repay the debt. Hazrat Zubair had purchased Ghaba for 170,000. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair sold it for 1.6 million. He then announced that if anyone was owed an amount by Hazrat Zubair, they should meet him in Ghaba. Upon selling the land in Ghaba for 1.6 million, he announced that if anyone was owed a debt, they should come to Ghaba to collect it. Hazrat Abdullah bin Jafar was owed 400,000 by Hazrat Zubair. He said to Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair, "If you like, I can pardon this debt. Or if you like, you can include this amongst the debts you owe, on the condition that you will repay it later." Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair refused this offer. Then Hazrat Abdullah bin Jabir said that he should be given a piece of the land. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair said, "Your portion will be from here to here," and sold that portion of the land to Hazrat Abdullah bin Jafar as a repayment of the debt. Subsequently, there were 4.5 portions of the land remaining. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair went to Hazrat Muawiyah. This is an incident from his time. Amr bin Uthman, Munzir bin Zubair, and Ibn Zama were also present there. Hazrat Muawiyah asked what the price of the land in Ghaba was. Hazrat Ibn Zubair informed him that each portion was worth 100,000. Then Hazrat Muawiyah asked how many portions of the land remained. He informed him that there were 4.5 portions remaining. Munzir bin Zubair said that he would purchase one portion for 100,000. Amr bin Uthman said he would purchase one portion for 100,000. And Ibn Zama also said that he would purchase one portion for 100,000. Then Hazrat Muawiyah asked how many portions remained, to which Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair replied that 1.5 portion remained. Hazrat Muawiyah said that he would purchase that portion for 150,000. Thus the land which remained in Ghaba was also sold. Abdullah bin Jafar later sold his portion to Hazrat Muawiyah for 600,000. Thus, just as Hazrat Zubair had said, Allah the Almighty would create means for the debt to be cleared. Some of his property was sold and the debt was repaid. When Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair had completely repaid the debt of Hazrat Zubair, his progeny asked for their inheritance to be given to them. Now that the debt had been repaid, they wanted their share of the inheritance. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair said, "No, by God, I will not distribute it among you until I have made an announcement on the day of Hajj for 4 years." Meaning he would make an announcement on the occasion of Hajj for 4 years, that anyone who was owed a debt by Hazrat Zubair should come to him so that he may repay it. Thus, he made this announcement at Hajj for 4 years. When 4 years had passed, he distributed the inheritance among the progeny of Hazrat Zubair. Hazrat Zubair had 4 wives. He had divided 1/8, i.e. the portion allotted to one's wife, into 4 parts. Thus, each wife received 1.1 million. When the remaining property was distributed, each wife received 1.1 million. According to one narration, His total wealth amounted to 35,200,000. Sufyan bin Uyayna narrates that the inheritance of Hazrat Zubair, which was distributed, was 40 million. Hisham bin Urwa narrates on the account of his father that the total amount left behind by Hazrat Zubair was equivalent to 51 or 52 million. Similarly, Urwa relates that Hazrat Zubair owned land in Egypt, in Alexandria. He also owned land in Kufa and some houses in Basra. He received an income from his properties in Medina. Nonetheless, after all his debt was cleared, the remaining wealth was distributed amongst his heirs.
मुतरफ कहते हैं कि एक मरतबा हमने हज़रत ज़ुबैर से कहा कि ए अबू अब्दुल्ला आप लोग किस मकसद की खातिर आए हैं
Mutaraf states, on one occasion we said to Hazrat Zubair, O Abu Abdullah, with what purpose have you come here now? You have allowed one Khalifa to be harmed to the extent that he was martyred, and now you seek retribution. Hazrat Zubair replied, in the era of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, and Hazrat Usman Ghani radiallahu anhum, we will recite the following verse of the Holy Quran. وَاتَّقُوا فِتْنَةَ لَا تُصِيبَنَّ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْكُمْ خَاصَّةً, meaning, and beware of an affliction which will not smite exclusively those among you who have done wrong, but instead this affliction will be commonplace. Yet we never thought that we would be the ones on whom this verse would be fulfilled as well, to the extent that the trial that has befallen us transpired. Whilst mentioning the conditions in which Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu was elected as the Khalifa, Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu states, when Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu was martyred, seeing that the discord among Muslims was growing, the companions present in Medina went to Hazrat Ali and insisted that he ought to take the bay'at of the people. At the same time, some from among the rebels also went to Hazrat Ali and said that the Islamic government was close to being divided. They stated that he ought to take the bay'at of the people so that the state of fear can be vanquished and peace can be restored. Thus, the people urged Hazrat Ali to take the bay'at, and having refused on a number of occasions, he accepted this responsibility and began to take the bay'at of the people. At the time, some prominent companions were outside of Medina. Some were forced to take the bay'at. In this regard, we find mention that Hakim bin Jabla and Malik bin Ashtar were sent along with a few men brandishing their swords in order to compel Hazrat Talha and Hazrat Zubair to take the bay'at, i.e. they stood around them with their swords drawn and told them to accept Hazrat Ali or else they will be killed. According to some narrations, it is even mentioned that they were forcibly dragged and brought along with them. Undoubtedly, a bay'at performed under coercion is no bay'at in its true essence. When it came to pledging allegiance, they said that they would perform the bay'at on the condition that Hazrat Ali would exact retribution against the killers of Hazrat Usman. Later on, when they saw that Hazrat Ali did not exact retribution immediately, they relinquished their bay'at and left Medina for Mecca. One group from among those who killed Hazrat Usman went to Hazrat Aisha and urged her to seek retribution against the killers of Hazrat Usman by declaring jihad. Thus, she acted accordingly and sought help from other companions. Hazrat Zubair and Hazrat Talha joined her, and a battle ensued between the two groups. Hazrat Aisha, Hazrat Talha, Hazrat Zubair, and between Hazrat Ali, which is known as Jang-e-Jamal. In the beginning of this battle, Hazrat Ali reminded Hazrat Zubair of a prophecy of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, as a result of which Hazrat Zubair left the battlefield. Hazrat Zubair left the battlefield early on and vowed not to fight against Hazrat Ali. He also affirmed that he was mistaken in his understanding. Similarly, Hazrat Talha also pledged allegiance to Hazrat Ali before his demise. We find in narrations that when Hazrat Talha was left fatally wounded and was suffering from his injuries, a man walked past him. Hazrat Talha asked him from which camp he belonged to. He replied that he belonged to the army of Hazrat Ali. Upon this, Hazrat Talha took his hand and placing it on top of his, stated, Your hand is that of Ali's, and I pledge allegiance to Hazrat Ali once again. With reference to Hazrat Zubair, it is written that he was martyred when he was returning from Jang-e-Jamal and had left the battlefield. With regards to fighting against Hazrat Ali, he affirmed that he was wrong and subsequently he left, but his martyrdom took place on the way back from Jang-e-Jamal. When Hazrat Ali reminded him by saying, I implore you in the name of God, have you not heard the Holy Prophet ﷺ say, you will fight against Ali and you will be the one who transgresses? Hazrat Zubair replied, yes, and I have only just recalled this. He then left. This was the reason why he refrained from fighting Hazrat Ali. The details of this were mentioned in relation to the accounts of Hazrat Talha bin Ubaidullah. From these accounts, it is evident that this discord was instigated by the rebels and the hypocrites, and as a result of the confusion, many of the companions became embroiled in this. Nonetheless, the event that transpired was not the right course of action. Harb bin Abi al-Aswad narrates, I met Hazrat Ali and Hazrat Zubair when Hazrat Zubair was on his mount and began cutting through the ranks in order to leave. His son Abdullah stood in front of him and asked what had happened to him. Hazrat Zubair said, Hazrat Ali has reminded me of a saying of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, which I have also heard from the blessed tongue of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. The Holy Prophet had stated, I would wage war against Hazrat Ali, and I would be the oppressor. For this reason, I will not fight against Hazrat Ali. His son said to him, you have come here to bring about peace between the people, and Allah the Almighty will be with you in this regard. Hazrat Zubair said, I have already made a promise. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubair said, you can give expiation of this promise by freeing your slave Jirjis, and remain here until Allah the Almighty brings about reconciliation amongst the people. The narrator says, Hazrat Zubair freed his slave Jirjis and remained there. However, the dispute worsened between the people, and so he mounted his horse and left. Hazrat Zubair resolved to leave, and on his way back to Medina, he reached a place called Safwan, which is located near Basra. A person named Bakr from the Banu Majashi met Hazrat Zubair and said, O companion of the Messenger of Allah, where are you heading to? You are my responsibility, and I will not allow anyone to harm you. So he accompanied Hazrat Zubair until they crossed paths with another person, Ahnaf bin Qais, to whom he said, this is Zubair, who I met in Safwan. Ahnaf said, two groups of Muslims are at loggerheads with one another and are smiting one another's heads with swords, whilst he heads to his son and family. When Umair bin Jamuz, Fazala bin Habis, and Nufay heard this, they rushed on their mount in pursuit of Hazrat Zubair and found him with a caravan. Umair bin Jarmuz, mounted on his horse, came behind Hazrat Zubair and attacked with his spear, injuring him slightly. Hazrat Zubair, who was mounted on a horse named Zul Khimar, fought back. Ibn Jarmuz, realizing he was moments from death, called out to his two friends. They attacked until ultimately Hazrat Zubair was martyred. According to one narration, when Hazrat Zubair was facing his murderer and managed to overpower him, the murderer sought refuge using the name of Allah. Hearing this, Hazrat Zubair let his grip on him go. This man said this a few times, but then treacherously rescinded on his oath and wounded Hazrat Zubair. Hazrat Zubair said to him, May Allah cause your ruin. You had been seeking protection by using Allah's name, yet then abandoned your oath. After Hazrat Zubair was martyred, Ibn Jarmuz brought the head and sword of Hazrat Zubair to Hazrat Ali. Hazrat Ali took the sword and said, I swear by Allah, this was the sword that would remove the expressions of anxiety from the countenance of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Yet now it is amidst disorder and bloodshed. Ibn Jarmuz requested permission to enter. The courtier informed that Ibn Jarmuz is present, who is the one who killed Hazrat Zubair, and is standing at the door requesting to be allowed to come in. Hazrat Ali replied, Ibn Safiya, may the one who killed Hazrat Zubair enter the hellfire. I have heard the Holy Prophet ﷺ say that every prophet is granted a friend, and my friend is Zubair. Hazrat Zubair was buried in the valley of Siwa. Hazrat Ali and his companions began to cry over his demise. Hazrat Zubair was 64 years old when he was martyred. According to others, he was 66 or 67. The residents of Medina would say regarding Hazrat Atka bin Zayd, wife of Hazrat Zubair bin Awam, that whoever desires to attain martyrdom should marry Hazrat Atka bin Zayd. She was first married to Abdullah bin Abi Bakr, who was martyred.
शहीद होकर उनसे जुदा हो गए, फिर हज़रत उमर बिन ख़त्ताब के अक़द में आईं, वो भी शहीद होकर उनसे जुदा हो गए, फिर हज़रत ज़ुबैर बिन अवाम के अक़द में आईं, वो भी शहीद होकर उनसे जुदा हो गए.
Then she married Hazrat Umar bin Khattab, who was also martyred. Then she married Hazrat Zubair bin Awam, who was also martyred. On the martyrdom of Hazrat Zubair, Hazrat Atika wrote the following couplets of poetry. غَدَرَ ابْنُ جُرْمُوزٍ بِفَارِسِ بُهْمَ يوم اللقاء وكان غير معرض يا عمرو لو نبهته لوجدته لا طائش رئيش الجنان ولا اليد شلت يمينك إن قتلت مسلما حلت عليك عقوبة المتعمد فكلتك أمك إن ظفرت بمثله فيما مضى مما تروح وتغتدي كم غمرة قد خاضها لم يثني عنها طرادك يا ابن فقع القردد. Ibn Jarmuz on the day of battle deceived that brave rider who was not one to flee. O Amr bin Jarmuz, if you had captured him, you would find him not cowardly, with hands trembling. May you wither away as you murdered a Muslim. You are now accountable for the punishment of murder. May ruin befall you. Amongst all those you spend company with day and night, have you ever vanquished a person with such high status as he? O you who was unable to bear even trivial suffering, Zubair was a person who even the harshest circumstances would be at the forefront of battle. O you light-skinned people, your spare attack could not diminish the honor and greatness of Hazrat Zubair in the slightest. When Ibn Jarmuz arrived and requested permission from Hazrat Ali to enter, this is a narration of At-Tabqat al-Kubra, Hazrat Ali preferred not to see him. Upon this, he, i.e. Ibn Jarmuz, said, was Zubair not amongst the party creating disorder? Hazrat Ali responded, may ruin befall you. I am certain that Talha and Zubair will be counted amongst those regarding whom Allah the Almighty says, وَنَزَعْنَا مَا فِي صُدُورِهِمْ مِنْ غِلٍّ إِخْوَانًا عَلَى سُرُرٍ مُتَقَابِلِينَ, meaning, and we shall remove whatever of rancor may be in their hearts, so that they will become as brothers seated on thrones facing one another. Hazrat Zubair had numerous marriages at different times and had a large number of children. The details are as follows. The following were born through Hazrat Asma bint Abi Bakr: Abdullah, Urwa, Munzir, Asim, Khadijatul Kubra, Hassan, Aisha. From Hazrat Khalid, the following children were born: Khalid, Amr, Habiba, Sauda, and Hind. From Hazrat Zubab bin Hunayf, the following were born: Musab, Hamza, and Ramla. From Hazrat Zainab, Jafar bin Marsad, the following were born: Ubaidah and Jafar. From Hazrat Kulthum bin Al-Aqwa, Zainab was born. From Hazrat Hilal bin Qais, Khadija Sugra was born. Hazrat Atka bint Zayd. These were the accounts relating to the life of Hazrat Zubair, which come to an end here. After this, I will mention some details of some deceased members. I will also lead their funeral prayers after the Friday prayer. The first mention is of Al-Hajj Ibrahim Mubarak Sahib, who was serving as the Naib Amir III. He passed away on 10th of August. Verily to Allah we belong and to Him shall we return. The deceased was born on 4th of June 1944 in Banjul and accepted Ahmadiyya in 1961 or 62 during the era of the late respected Chaudhry Sharif Sahib, who was the former Amir of the Gambia Jamaat. He was among the pioneering members of the Jamaat. He was very regular in his prayers and offering the Tahajjud prayer. By the grace of Allah the Almighty, he was also a Musi and was always remained at the forefront in offering financial sacrifices. The deceased son states, even prior to his demise, he offered the Tahajjud prayer. He then asked for some water and soon after passed away. The deceased had great love for the Holy Quran and recited it regularly. He had the opportunity to serve his faith as Naib Amir for a very long period of time. He also had the opportunity to serve as the Afsar Jalsa Salana, National Secretary for External Affairs, and as Sadr Majlis Ansarullah.
Masroor Secondary School ke board member bhi the. Qualified teacher the.
The deceased was also a board member of the Masroor Secondary School. He was a qualified teacher and taught in various parts of the country. The deceased also traveled to the USA to pursue further education in his field of study and acquired a master's. Thereafter, he returned to the Gambia in order to serve his country and faith. He was among the founding members of a very famous management development institute in the Gambia, which provides higher education to civil servants as well as others. Many of the Gambia's top civil servants have received their training from this institute. The deceased also served as the headmaster for Tahir Ahmadiyya Senior School and also the Nusrat Senior Secondary School. He taught many students from his own country and also foreign students. He held a very reputable position amongst the intellectual circles, and many would refer to him as their teacher. He is survived by 2 wives, 7 sons and 2 daughters. One of his wives, Mrs. Akiba Sahiba, is serving as the Sadr Lajna Imaila of the Gambia. One of his sons is a life devotee and graduated from Jamiatul Mubashirin. Similarly, one of his sons has previously served as Sadr of Khudam al-Ahmadiyya. 2 of his sons are residing in the USA and one of his daughters resides here in the UK. May Allah the Almighty grant the deceased His mercy and forgiveness and enable his children to also remain attached to their faith in accordance to his wishes. Amir Sahib of the Gambia writes, I was also one of his students at the Kriabi Land Middle School. The Ahmadi students there, along with other Muslim students, arranged for a class on the subject of Islamic studies to be held once a week on Thursday, and the deceased would take this class. The deceased had great respect for the Jamaat office holders and the Nizam-e-Jamaat. Despite the fact that he was my teacher, however, he always demonstrated complete obedience to me as an Amir and also other Jamaat office holders. He was an extremely sincere, hardworking and generous individual. He was a loyal servant of Khilafat and always showed utmost obedience. He had a bond of great love with Khilafat and always remained at the forefront in the defense of the Jamaat and Khilafat. He possessed a lot of religious knowledge as well and would always use arguments and wisdom when conversing with others. He would utilize the advanced modes of technology and through different means try to convey the message of the Prophet ﷺ and would always be engaged in tabligh work. The second funeral is of respected Naim Ahmad Khan Sahib, son of Abdul Jalil Khan Sahib, who was serving as Naib Amir of Karachi. He passed away 2 or 3 months ago at the end of April.
इनके ख़ानदान में सबसे पहले मोहतरम अख्तर अली साहब के ज़रिए से अहमदियत आई थी.
Verily to Allah we belong and to Him shall we return. Ahmadiyyat entered his family through respected Akhtar Ali Sahib, who did the bayat through Hazrat Maulvi Hassan Ali Sahib Bhagalpuri, who was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. Maulvi Akhtar Ali Sahib was the maternal uncle of the deceased's mother and his father's paternal uncle. Naeem Ahmad Khan Sahib completed his matriculation exams from Patna in Bihar, India. After the independence of Pakistan, he migrated to Lahore in 1948. He completed his intermediate studies from Dayal Singh College and then completed his MSc from TI College, Lahore. Thereafter, he moved to London, and in 1959 he returned to Karachi and was employed in a gas company and retired in 1993 at a position of a senior general manager. He began his service for the Jamaat as a Naib Nazir of Sanat al-Tijarat in Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya. Thereafter, he was appointed as Naib Qaid Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya Muqami Karachi and was then appointed as the Qaid of Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya in 1966. He continued to serve at this position for 4 years and then served as a Zaim-e-Ala for Martin Road, Karachi, and also served as the Nazim Ansarullah for Karachi district, and continued to serve at this position until 1997, and also served as the Nazim Ansarullah of Karachi, local. In 1997, the deceased was appointed as the Secretary for Waqf Jadid Karachi and continued to serve in this role until 2019. He also had the opportunity to serve as the Naib Amir of Karachi and was one of the directors of Fazl Umar Foundation. The deceased also had the opportunity to serve as the auditor of the very first executive committee of the International Association of Ahmadiyya Architects and Engineers, and for many years he also served as the president for its Karachi branch. In 1970, when a plan was formed to produce and install machinery for the roti plant for Jalsa Salana, the deceased had the honor of serving as one of the engineers in this project. The deceased's daughter Amara Sahiba writes, "After the demise of our mother, Naeem Khan Sahib's wife passed away quite some time ago. Our father not only treated us like a compassionate father, but also fulfilled the role of a caring mother and a sympathetic friend in the most excellent manner. He always demonstrated loyalty for his faith and Khilafat and was very regular in his prayers. He always taught us about the importance of establishing a bond with the Jamaat." His son-in-law, Dr. Ghaffar Sahib writes, "Our family ties were formed 30 years ago. And during this entire period, I had the opportunity to observe the deceased from close, and his close company and companionship has had a very positive impact upon me. He had an extremely pure disposition and always adopted simplicity. His standard of worship was indeed worthy of admiration. He was very regular in his tahajjud prayer, and even during the latter stage of his life, when he needed support to walk owing to a stroke, he still did not allow any change to come about in his regular activities. In fact, he had told the male nurse to wake him up at a certain time and seat him, and he would then offer his tahajjud prayer. Similarly, despite his disability, he would continue to do Jamaat work on his laptop."
नसीम तबस्सुम साहब कहते हैं कि हर वक्त इनकी होंठों पर मुस्कुराहट रहती थी और बावजूद बीमार होने के दफ्तर ज़रूर आते थे.
Naseem Tabassum Sahib, who is serving as a missionary, states that he would always have a smile on his face, and despite his illness, he would always come to the office. He would show great love to the life devotees and treated them with great respect. May Allah the Almighty grant the deceased His mercy and forgiveness and elevate his station. May He also enable his progeny to continue on his good deeds. There is also a further detail about him. Zertish Munir Sahib from Norway writes, "The deceased was always ready to serve his faith. He always showed great love, sincerity and loyalty for Khilafat." He further writes, "When I was serving as a district guide, he would guide me in an excellent manner. I have observed that he always demonstrated an exemplary level of obedience and cooperation with every Amir." The next funeral is of respected Bushra Sahiba, wife of the late Thekedar Wali Muhammad Sahib of Germany, who passed away on 19th of July at the age of 74 owing to a heart attack in Germany. Verily to Allah we belong and to Him shall we return. The deceased's paternal grandfather was Hazrat Mian Nizamuddin Sahib of Nabha, who was a companion of the Promised Messiah. The deceased was very regular in her tahajjud prayers and salat, extremely hospitable, looked after the poor and needy, and always at the forefront in offering financial sacrifices. She was a very pious and sincere lady and had a bond of great love with Khilafat. In her childhood, owing to weakness in her eyes, she could not read the Holy Quran. However, after her marriage, with the help of her children, she was able to memorize a few chapters of the Holy Quran. Apart from listening to the tilawat of the Holy Quran in MTA, she would also regularly listen to my sermons as well as other programs. By the grace of Allah the Almighty, she was a Musia. She is survived by 4 sons and 2 daughters. One of her sons, Shafiqur Rahman Sahib, is currently serving as a missionary and also is the missionary in charge in New Zealand. Another son, Atiqur Rahman Sahib, is currently serving here as a life devotee in the records department in the private secretary's office. Shafiqur Rahman Sahib, who is a missionary in charge, could not attend his mother's funeral. Her burial took place here. May Allah the Almighty grant him peace and patience. May Allah the Almighty grant the deceased His forgiveness and mercy and enable her progeny to become the recipients of her prayers. After the Friday prayers, I shall lead their funeral prayers.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر